హలో మై డియర్ వండర్ఫుల్ లిసనర్స్. గుడ్ మార్నింగ్, గుడ్ ఆఫ్టర్నూన్, గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ అందరికి. మీరు వింటున్నారు తెలుగు ఎన్ఆర్ఐ రేడియో. ఇది ప్రవాసాంధ్రుల గుండె చప్పుడు. అండ్ ఈ టైంలో ఈ వాయిస్ ఎవరబ్బా ఈ అమ్మాయి అసలు అనే సందిగ్ధంలో మీరు అందరు ఉన్నారా? ఉండే ఉంటారు. ఇండియా లిజనర్స్ అయితే మోస్ట్లీ చాలా మంది వరకు అందరికీ నేను అపరిచితురాలనే, కానీ యుఎస్ లిజనర్స్ కి అయితే నేను సుపరిచితురాలనే అనమాట. సో క్రియేటివ్ కబుర్లతో సరదా మాటలతోటి మీ దిల్ ఖుష్ చేసే అమ్మాయినండి నేను. ఎవరనుకుంటున్నారు? నేనే మీ నాన్ స్టాప్ మాటల సున్నామి ఆర్జే నమ్మీన్ అనమాట. సో ఆఫ్టర్ త్రీ వీక్ బ్రేక్ ఇవాళ మళ్ళీ ఐఎమ్ బ్యాక్. సో ఫస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ అయితే అందరికి హ్యాపీ మండే. ఐ నో అందరి ఫేసులు కాస్త ఇవాళ లైట్ గా బ్లూ కలర్ లో కనిపిస్తూ ఉంటాయి, ఎందుకంటే మండే బ్లూస్ కదా. సో ఐ కెన్ ఇమాజిన్ అనమాట ఎలా ఉన్నారో అందరూ. బేసికల్లీ మీ డేస్ ఎలా ఉన్నా కానీ, అది మండే అయినా ట్యూస్డే అయినా సండే అయినా, మీ డేని మరింత ఆహ్లాదకరం చేయడానికి మేము ఉన్నాం కదా. హమ్ హేనా. సో డోంట్ వరీ. అండ్ ఇవాళ మన షోలో, అంటే నా హ్యాపీ అవర్ షోలో కొంచెం నేను మామూలు సరదా కబుర్లతో బ్యాక్ అయినా కానీ ఇవాళ ఒక మంచి ఇన్ఫర్మేటివ్ ఇంటర్వ్యూ చేయబోతున్నాను అనమాట. అండ్ ఆ ఇంటర్వ్యూ టాపిక్ ఏమిటి అంటే, మరి మన యుఎస్ లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళకి, అట్లానే ఇండియాలో ఉండి యుఎస్ రావాలనుకునే వాళ్ళకి చాలా ఉపయోగపడే టాపిక్ అనమాట యుఎస్ ఇమిగ్రేషన్ అనేది. అంటే అదొక మహా సముద్రం అని అందరికీ తెలుసు. ఎంత తెలుసుకున్నా ఇంకా తెలుసుకోవాల్సిన బోల్డ్ అంత ఉంటుంది కదా. సో మరి ప్రతి ఒక్కరి కేసు డిఫరెంట్ ఉంటుంది. సో అందరికి ఎన్నో డౌట్స్, ఎన్నో కన్సర్న్స్, ఏంటి ఎలా అసలు ఎందుకు ఇలా అని చెప్పేసి అందరికి క్వశ్చన్స్ ఉంటాయి. కాబట్టి మరి ఇవాళ ఒక చాలా బ్యూటిఫుల్ అండ్ ఇన్ఫర్మేటివ్ ఇంటర్వ్యూ చేయబోతున్నాను అనమాట. యుఎస్ లో ఉన్న వారికి అయితే ఐఎమ్ షూర్ చాలా కన్సర్న్స్ ఉంటాయని, అట్లానే మరి ఇండియాలో ఉంటూ యుఎస్ లో కెరియర్ ప్రాస్పెక్ట్స్ గురించి ఆలోచనలో ఉన్నవారు కావచ్చు, లేదా ఇక్కడికి వచ్చి చదువుకోవాలనుకున్న వారికి కూడా, మీకు కూడా బోల్డన్ని కన్సర్న్స్ ఉంటాయి కదా. సో మరి వాటన్నిటికీ ఆన్సర్స్ అనుకుంటున్నారా? అయితే హియర్స్ యువర్ బెస్ట్ ఛాన్స్ అండి. ఎందుకంటే today we have with us the most charming, super supportive attorney, Lucas Garretson from Burgos and Garretson Law Firm Anamata. So he is here with us to give us updates on current immigration policies, to talk about H-1B denials and green card, processing related to address green card processing related queries and H-4EAD removal. So without any further ado, Mari, let us welcome him on the show. Hi Lucas, a hearty welcome to you to the Telugu NRI Radio.
Hi, thank you for having me. Namaste.
Oh wow, it's a pleasure, Lucas. So I think it's your fourth or fifth interview with us, and we can't tell you how delighted we are to have you on our show.
Well, I'm grateful for you to having me on the show. It's a great resource to inform all the listeners about all the current policy changes and situations that might be coming up here this year.
True. Yes, Lucas. So we're going to shortly begin with the interview. Before that, Lucas, I'm just going to quickly announce the dial-up numbers to the listeners and then get back to you.
Sure.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ. సో మై డియర్ లిసనర్స్, మరి మీకు H-1B క్యాప్ రిలేటెడ్ క్వశ్చన్స్ కావచ్చు, H-4EAD గురించి ఏమైనా క్వశ్చన్స్ కావచ్చు, అట్లానే గ్రీన్ కార్డ్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ రిలేటెడ్ క్వరీస్ ఏమున్నా సరే, హియర్స్ యువర్ బెస్ట్ ఛాన్స్ టు స్పీక్ విత్ స్పెషల్ గెస్ట్ లూకస్. సో మరి కాల్ చేయండి. వెంటనే మీరు కాల్ చేయవలసిన నంబర్స్ ఏంటంటే, ఇండియా లిసనర్స్ అయితే 9705220005 కు కాల్ చేయండి. ఇదే నంబర్ ను మీరు వాట్సాప్ లో సేవ్ చేసుకుంటే అక్రాస్ ద గ్లోబ్ ఎక్కడి నుంచి అయినా కాల్ చేయొచ్చు. అట్లనే యూఎస్ఏ లిసనర్స్ అయితే 9197012005 కు కాల్ చేయండి. మీరు స్కైప్ నుంచి చేస్తున్నట్లయితే తెలుగు ఎన్ఆర్ఐ రేడియో అనే ఐడిని సర్చ్ చేసి సింపుల్ గా కాల్ చేయడమే అనమాట. సో మీకు ఉన్న క్వెరీస్ అన్ని కూడా మరి ఆన్సర్ చేయడానికి వాళ్ళు లూకస్ మనతో ఉన్నారు. తప్పకుండా మరి ఈ ఛాన్స్ ని వినియోగించుకుంటారని అనుకుంటున్నాను. అండ్ ఇన్ కేస్ మీరు ఒకవేళ కాల్ చేయలేకపోతే తప్పకుండా మీరు మీ క్వశ్చన్ ని మెసేజ్ కూడా చేయవచ్చు టు తెలుగు ఎన్ఆర్ఐ రేడియో @gmail.com. నేను ఆ క్వశ్చన్ చదివి ఆన్సర్ పొందే ప్రయత్నం తప్పకుండా చేస్తాను. సో అదనమాట, తప్పకుండా కాల్ చేసేయండి మరైతే. ఆల్ రైట్. సో లూకస్, హౌ ఆర్ యూ టుడే?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, except that it's Monday. So Monday, I usually have my Monday blues going on. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So a lot of questions for you, Lucas, today. So what do we begin with? I think, is it okay to begin with the green card related questions first?
That's fine. Whatever you want to start with, we can go ahead and start with.
Okay, awesome. All right. So the first one is, so there has been a bill that got introduced improving the chances to issue green cards to highly skilled individuals. I think it was about 12% initially, and now the proposed percentage is about 56%. Right. So why is there a hike in that percentage, and what is the step-by-step process to get, this bill approved?
Well, as most people are aware right now, we're at a a certain crossroads, so to speak, with our immigration system as a country. Not only does this impact people from the Asian countries, China, India, the Philippines, where they have a high volume of immigration, certain type of visas. We also have issues right now at our border,
Right.
where there's an influx of people seeking asylum. So it's a complicated issue, which, from my point of view, I think there's going to have to be a comprehensive immigration reform to address all the issues. And one of those would be, maybe removing certain the country caps for each category of employment-based green cards. So we hope that's something that might continue to progress. But again, we're getting close to an election year, so it might be still a year, 2 years out before any, significant policy might happen. So I know Donald Trump's team has touted a merit-based point system similar to Canada. But anything we do, we would have to have support from both parties. And at this point in time, there's such a humanitarian crisis at the border. Even both parties can't seem to work together to help that. I believe it's very sad news. I think there was actually someone from India, a young lady who passed away trying to seek asylum on the southern border. I think this happened a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So in the big picture, that's probably the most important thing to address first. But like I said at the beginning, if there is any comprehensive reform, we would have to include employment-based categories for people from India, as well as, maybe fixing the asylum issues or any other Dreamer Act problems where, some of the kids are here, they're dreamers. So hopefully we can have something that would address all those issues. Because right now, if you have a priority date of today, EB2, I think you're looking at like 50 to 60 years is at the current rate to get the actual GC in hand. So it's really not practical. And that's something that we would need to fix moving forward.
Yeah. So you were talking about that very sad news that a girl died at the southern border seeking asylum. So do we have more news on that, and what really happened there?
Well, I think what happened was someone was trying to cross the border, and in certain parts of our border in the south is very dangerous as far as like environmental factors. So she could have, died of heat exhaustion or something like that. I think that's what happened. But I know there's been a couple other people who have passed away this past week, and that's a humanitarian crisis that we have at the moment. And hopefully there's something we can address and as a country, as a society, and move forward. So, we can rectify that. And then of course, hopefully with everything else, we can rectify this huge backlog we have with employment-based visas.
Yes. So about that, and there's another bill for the per country quota removal that has been reintroduced in the House this year. So, and I have read that there have been certain amendments made to this bill this time, and the chances to have this bill approved now have kind of increased. So is that true? And if yes, what are the kind of amendments that are made to the bill now? And, is it more likely to, be passed this time? Or is it even this is going to take a long time? So how hopeful are you about this?
I'm always hopeful. And I always tell all my clients until you have an answer that you're not that's negative, you always want to be positive about the process, because you can, it's a lot of stress and anxiety that goes with this. And at the same time, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because I mean, just like what happened last year, I thought there was a 50-50 chance of that actually going through, and it ended up not happening. With this administration, with the Senate, the way the Senate's controlled by the Republicans, the Congress uses certain rules and things to advance bills that could become law before the president would sign it. And the current Senate Majority Leader, he won't even put certain bills up to vote. So it's kind of like a stonewall tactic. And I really think a lot of what's going on right now is very important. And I say it's very important because it opens the dialogue. It allows all these different ideas to address the problem to go through a rulemaking process or a committee or whatever it might be to find hopefully good solutions to these issues. But again, I really feel that a lot of this hinges on what's going to happen in the 2020 election.
Right. Okay. So, do you personally feel that this could be an effective idea to clear, the years of backlog that there is?
Yeah,
to
I
have
think so. And I think so because I think in both categories, and I always tell people, immigration as a whole, you have to look at it. Everything is similar to like a rainbow. There's different colors and hues and everything that are in a rainbow. So an indigo is not the same thing as yellow, and yellow is not the same thing as green, and so on and so forth. Well, there's a lot of different processes that happen within immigration. So, if we're looking at one part of it, it might be a certain band or color, but the whole system in general needs to be addressed. So what we have to do is to go and also fix any issues that we have so many of these kids we call dreamers who are brought to the United States as children. They grow up here, they speak English, go to American schools, all these things, but they were brought here by their parents, and that's not their fault. So there's so many people that are just stuck in the between the rock and a hard place because what they have is deferred action, and all that guarantees is that the government's deferring any action to take any action or about the removal or addressing their status until a future date. So we have a lot of these programs that are all everything's all tied together. So one of the and of course in our society, and I always feel bad for this, the one thing that always gets the least amount of attention is this backlog of EB2, EB3 category for India, because whenever you hear politicians speak about everything, most all politicians want to tout, we want people to contribute to society, advancing technology, growing the economy. And if all of these employees who come here to the United States are not doing that, then I don't know what would qualify for that, because I know for a fact that most all my clients, they work for tech firms, and a lot of the work that they do is very important to what we do here in our economy, and it reflects that by the growth we have right now.
Yes. So it surprises me too, because there's very little attention that's there towards the backlog that you just said. So there have been bills that are passed. It be the per country quota removal, or the chances of improving opportunities for highly skilled individuals, the bill that was passed for that. So to see any kind of action being taken place for these, do we still have to wait out until the next elections, or can we see any kind of progress? Can we hope for any kind of progress before that?
Well, just like I said, I would always want to stay as more of an optimist on everything.
Okay.
I would always want something good to happen, but as a practical analysis of where we're at as a country right now, it would be really hard for me to see any significant comprehensive action being taken prior to the election. Stranger things could happen, but it would take there's a lot of moving pieces with this, and even if it got to the Senate and it wanted to go there and everyone there supported it, what's the president going to do? He changes his mind weekly as far as like how he wants to address things, or which foreign dictator he wants to be friends with. It changes quite often. So you can't ever plan on what his mood or whatever it might be, if it ever got to the point of him signing something into law.
Okay, I hear you. Then if the per country quota removal, comes into effect, so how many years of backlog is likely to be cleared? And of late, I think EB3 backlog, it seems to have, caught up much pace than the EB2 backlog. Why is that? Any idea, Lucas?
So at the time of everything was filed, I think we're right now at April 2009. And at that time, there was a higher volume of EB2 cases filed. So due to there's certain numerical quotas that they reserve for each category, right? So since they had that, it might right now look like it's moving faster for EB3, but I'm sure more people will in the future have the opportunity to change their category from EB2 to EB3 as they see their date approaching. And that's portability, so we can preserve the priority date, and then you can move from one category to the other.
Oh, that's okay? Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people now are filing who are close. Like, let's say they have a July 2009. There's a lot of people who might right now be filing a new labor process, and then a new I-140 that would be just for EB3. And then as long as, the job requirements are similar to the same, then you can port over the priority date.
Okay. So, any other suggestion that you have for the GC applicants? Any other general suggestion that you have for them? Now, I mean, the one that you just suggested, the portability idea. So, apart from that, any other suggestion that you have?
Unfortunately, right now there's not much we can do except just to stay alert with what the the priority dates are. If you can file the first day you can have the opportunity to file the application itself, that's good, because that would allow you to at least get your EAD and advanced parole. So at least if you've been on H1 for 10 years, at least that helps. If you need to travel or do other things, you don't have to go through the stamping process or anything else. It'd allow you easier access to come back in the country if you were to travel. But other than just being diligent and reviewing the visa bulletin, there's not much else we can do.
Okay. All right. So that is all I had for green card. Lucas, if there's anything that you want to add, appreciate that. So, or we can move on to H1B related questions.
Sure. We can. Well, if you want to, we can do the H4 EAD kind of an update right now, since it's kind of related to the GC.
Perfect. Yes. So, yeah, please go ahead, Lucas.
So we know that there's two processes currently going on. There's a court case and a rule change that's currently pending. And as of right now, everything's still the same. I think the court case, there's the next hearing there's an oral argument set in September, I think, for that to progress. Okay. But there's already, that's kind of been stalled out. And as long as there's going to be plenty of notice if anything were to change. But, as of right now, I think there's other bills that have been introduced to protect H4 EAD. And then, obviously, if anything were to change suddenly, I'm sure there's other lawsuits that would be able to be filed that would, put that would allow the program to continue pending that litigation.
Okay. So, if the H4 EAD removal, it comes into effect. So I have a couple of questions, Lucas. So how is it going to impact the existing H4 EAD holders? Suppose someone has a valid H4 EAD visa for say next couple of years. So once it comes into effect, is it revoked right away for them, or are they going to be allowed to complete their tenure? And if someone is still on their way to get their H4 EAD, say about in a year, so how is the situation going to be for them?
So good question. So to answer the question, once you receive a benefit, unless there's something where it was obtained by a gross negligence or mistake for you shouldn't qualify for that benefit, or there was fraud or something else involved with it, once you get that benefit, you can keep that benefit till it expires. So if you get H4 EAD until 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and they cancel the program, you still have your EAD. Now, the second part of the question, if let's say we know they're going to cancel this September 1st, well, if we file on, before September 1st and it's received by USCIS, they'll continue processing that application, that benefit.
Okay. Got that. So the applicants that have, applied for this before the set date will still be able to, get this process, through. The new applicants, while they might not, have a chance to do the same. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Got that. All right. So another question there. For H4 and H4 EAD renewals, there has been a new step that has been introduced recently, the biometrics step. So now that there's an additional step, how is it going to affect the timeline, to get this renewal approved? And how much time would this biometric step, take? And is there anything that the applicants can do to expedite this process?
That's a good question. We've seen a lot of issues with this here lately. In the past, I've always recommended my clients file, premium processing if they're doing an extension with H4 EAD, because everything will be filed concurrent, right? So everything will be processed at the same pace. So it kind of allows you to use premium processing when it's not normally available for H4 EAD. Now, the biometric appointments, now it's like a first come first served system. So if you live in a part of the country where there's not many other non-immigrants who would need this service, it might be faster for you to get an appointment and go in and get processed. But if you're here like in Texas, California, New York, I'm sure the wait time would be greater than if you were like in Kansas. So what we've seen is typically an extra 4 to 6 weeks of processing on average. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do to expedite or speed up the process, because you really can't put that type of service request in until there's a certain amount of time has passed. Now, there is another pending lawsuit right now that covers, I think it was filed about a month ago, that there was the delays in H4 EAD adjudication were causing hardships on the people. So there's 20 or 30 different categories for employment authorization based on what you qualify for. For H4 EAD, that would be category C26, and that category only allows you to work if you have an approved EAD in your hand, right? So what does this mean? Well, if you're also adjusting your status, you'd be in category C9. And if your card expires, but you have the receipt, you can continue working with just the paper in your hand for 6 months after the expiration. But for H4 EAD, for L2 EAD holders, you have to have the actual card in your hand to continue working. So there is hardship that might interrupt employment, things like that. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this. Hopefully, this lawsuit, progresses where we can get some positive results where it speeds up the processing times.
Okay. So one question around that. So you were just saying that suppose if the current authorization card for a certain individual has expired and the application for a new card is still in progress, then they cannot be continuing to work. Is that what you said? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. You're correct. So certain categories for EAD, employment authorization, certain categories allow you to present the receipt to your employer after your card expires, and you can continue working while the renewal is processing. For like an L2 and H4 EAD, that's not possible. You have to have the actual card in your hand to keep working. So there's multiple different categories that affect it. It's like I said, it affects everything from asylum, refugee, in process, adjustment of status, all these different categories. That some allow you to work with the receipt and some require you to have the card in hand.
Oh,
so that's where this current lawsuit's coming from, is saying, this additional delay of an extra 6 weeks, you might cause someone to lose their job or to be out of work or not be able to support the family. So that's types of hardship that we would show. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Also, Lucas, what is the reason behind, introducing biometrics at this level for renewal? Because initially they are, already submitted, right? The biometrics is one of the steps. So why is it now introduced for renewal as well?
Well, it's biometrics. It's self-explanatory. So what they're doing is they're collecting your biometric information, and they're updating and checking the databases to see if someone might have done something where they're no longer eligible to continue maintaining that status. Okay. So let's say someone was arrested, or there was accused of a certain crime, or all these. It's just a way for the government to keep tabs on anything that might have changed since the last time they did the biometrics.
Got that. Okay. You make sense. All right, Lucas. Yeah. So, apart from that, for H4EAD renewals, do you have any other, update? Sorry, the H4EAD removal. Sorry.
No, at this time, again, it's similar to what we were saying earlier. I mean, until something really progresses, there's no need to have doubt or anxiety over it, because this process has already been going on for, I think, a year and a half or so. And for anything drastic to change or happen, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, the most important thing is just to not rely so much on the news, because there's a lot of also fake news that kind of circulates that says government's already begun removing the H4EAD, or there's already like a certain timeline where it's going to be expired. And just be mindful of that, because you don't want to have extra stress or doubt more than what you already have.
Yes. Yep. All right. Okay, Lucas. So, just one thing to all the listeners: if you have any other H4EAD specific questions or any GC processing related questions, so do give us a call, and you can speak with Lucas directly and get your queries answered. All right. So I think, Lucas, we can now move on to the H1B questions.
Sure.
Okay, right. So off late, there have been a lot of rejections, H1B denials. In the amount of denials, they have been significantly, increased. So I just like to know what the common reasons are for, the denials, and what kind of care should the applicants be taking to avoid, denials in general.
Well, that's a good question. We've seen statistically that certain companies have a higher threshold of denials than others. So a lot of larger firms, Cognizant, Capgemini, I think Capgemini had 80 some odd % denial rate. And if you look at other companies like Google and Apple, they're at 1 or 2%. So when all things are considered the same, it's pretty obvious that USCIS is not applying the laws the same to everyone. So they're treating certain companies differently than others. And, that's something that we need to address and move forward. Now, as far as if most of the listeners work for consulting firms, smaller companies like that, some of the more current issues are the same as what we've seen for the past year. There's policy memorandum that came out that, USCIS wants to see sort of like a chain of contracts, so to speak, to establish the availability of specialty occupation work. And what this means is if you have your end client, and then you'll have like a large vendor implementation partner, like a TCS, and you might have another layer with the vendor, and then your employer would be at the end. They would like to see continuity and statements of work or purchase orders between all parties. Now, most of the time, that's hard to get all that specific information, and we're able to show that by showing the work product, letters, again, in-client letters, vendor letters from each party, any other work assignments, milestone tables, slide decks, things like that. And the job of the attorney is to put together a picture with all the evidence to show that we've established all the requirements needed beyond at the evidentiary standard, which is preponderance of the evidence for these types of cases. And that preponderance of the evidence is a standard, which basically means it's more likely than not. So we're looking at 51% to 49%. So if we can assemble all the evidence and say, look, more likely than not, this is all valid and everything's here is sufficient, then they need to approve the case. And that's kind of the mindset and the focus that we have on that. There is also, again, this year in the CAP, there's a continued focus on the STEM OPT, Day 1 CPT, F1 status, maintenance of status. And it's always important that to not wait till the last minute for these types of RFPs to come up, because there's a lot of information you have to gather for this, So you have to have for STEM OPT, you need to have a detailed training plan. You need to have evaluations. You'd have to show maybe your payroll records that you've been actually training or working on this project for this period of time. And it's always best to have that prepared ahead of time. And for Day 1 CPT, most of the time you're going to have to get evidence showing how the curriculum applies to this internship. And the institution, the school itself, is going to have to help provide that information to the student.
Okay. So planning ahead of time and, having all the evidences ready rather than, panicking in the last minute would help. Is that what you're saying, Lucas? To have all possible, evidences ready, to have all sorts of documents ready in hand.
Correct.
They can be submitted on time. Right.
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Because a lot of people right now, there's a lot of people maybe that submitted their CAP case in regular processing, and now they're thinking about upgrading to premium. Before you do that, it's a good idea to maybe start getting an idea of what information you can get, what information you won't be able to get, and then that way you can analyze that with the employer and their attorney.
Okay, got that. So, there have also been a lot of denials based on the specialty occupation, right? So, to avoid denials on specialty occupation grounds, are there any kind of certifications, that the USCIS gives better weightage to, the certifications that the H-1B applicants can do to help support their, job description better?
Unfortunately, no. So in the past, the policy with USCIS is the USCIS officers are supposed to look at the job duties, not the job titles. So let's say I have a SAP functional analyst or something like this, and then I assign it a software developer applications SOC code 151132, right? Well, in the past we could do that and it would qualify because of the SOC code, but immigration, I've seen a few RFPs where they're saying, well, I see that you put here in your job description ABCD, but ABCD does not really match what a software developer actually does. So it's very important, and I work with all my clients on this, it's very important to have a very detailed job description, job duties, percentage of time working on that, to show and showcase how that will match up with the Occupational Outlook Handbook or whatever other resources you might use to show how that job matches up with that, SOC code.
Okay. Got that. So one more question here is, Lucas. So for some petitioners, the job description and the job duties, might be really tied together, but the job description and the educational background might not be, very tied together. So, however, let's just say that they have a decent 10 to 15 years of work experience and the profile same as their job description. So, are these kind of petitioners also likely to receive a denial based on specialty occupation?
Probably not. I mean, you're going to get an RFE. Like there's few people, especially that are very senior guys. You'll have maybe someone who has an engineering degree, like a mechanical engineering degree or something, or a business and commerce. But if you have that much experience, you can get an experience evaluation to show the equivalency of a degree in computer science or engineering, whatever it might be, to meet the requirements for the education, right? So
right.
Everything's always case by case basis. I always mention this, and I want to tell all the listeners, it's very easy to go to a message board or to talk to your friend, your coworker. This process is going on. Oh my goodness, this happened to him. This is going to happen to me. And everyone, especially the attorney, you have to look at each case as a unique individual case. Every single case is like a fingerprint, right? That no two cases will be exactly the same. And what I mean by that is you might go through a same process, but you have to find the small details that make that case unique and strengthen those details. And that's what, attorneys do. You have to find, okay, I know this candidate has, MBA, but we're trying to have him do, he's a Hadoop developer now. So how does that transition? Well, now we need to go get experience letters. We need to get an evaluation to show, well, he's been doing Hadoop for 10 years. Even though his degree is MBA, the experience he has would still qualify him for a bachelor's degree in computer science. So that's the mindset with that. You have to always focus on the unique details.
Right. So something that's worked for someone might not work for the other person, because when you dig in deep, the ground level details are actually different, are unique from person to person. So we can't just generalize and say that, something that's worked for you will also work for me, or the other way around.
Correct. And there's a lot of these students that go through this process. I mean, there's a lot of stress that goes with it. And I always tell people, it's great to have the support of WhatsApp groups or message boards, but everything you should take with a grain of salt. Just because 5 people say my case was denied doesn't mean your case is going to be denied.
Right.
And vice versa. Just because 5 people have their case approved doesn't mean you'll have your case approved. So don't get caught up. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and you have to take everything with, as it comes.
Right. So whenever something like this happens to people around you, naturally a lot of questions arise. So what's the best way to, get these questions answered? So, because a lot of times it's sheer assumptions, and they might not even be true. So what's the best way to, get these answers, clarified?
Well, I can invite all the listeners, if they message me through my Facebook page, we can schedule an appointment, a free consultation to help address that, or contact another attorney. Maybe most attorneys hopefully would offer a discount or maybe a free consultation to address the issues. That's always great. Good to have that support, because you don't want to have all this doubt, and going day to day. At the end of the day, like I said, a lot of things can happen with one person, and whatever happens on their case has no effect whatsoever on the other person's case.
Right. That's a great initiative, Lucas, to, come up with a free consultation. So in order to get that, so they should be liking your FB page. Is that correct?
Correct. So they can like the Facebook page, and then just message me from there, and I'll schedule a time to speak. We'll keep it to 15, 20 minutes, and I'll try and address the questions the best I can. And again, like I said, I'll offer it as a free consultation. Okay.
Sounds great. So could you just tell us your FB page name? So, I'm going to announce that to all our listeners one more time.
It's the same as my website. I think it's on Facebook. It's at bgimmlaw.com. Or dot.
Okay.
I don't know if it has .com. I think it's just at bgimmlaw.
BGIMM Law. Okay. So I'm going to quickly check that, and I'll announce the name before we end the show one more time.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that way
awesome.
if you don't get your call in today, you can at least maybe have your question answered if we're not able to get to you today.
Yes, Lucas. So I'll surely do that, and that's a really great initiative from your side. I have one more question. That is, a specific scenario. Suppose, let's just say, for a student who is in OPT, his or her H-1B, it got picked in lottery. So now he or she has to get the stamping done. So should he be going to his home country for this first stamping, or can he just go to any nearby country to get this done?
Well, you can still go to Canada or Mexico to get the stamp. It's probably, a lot of these students, I always tell people this too, is, these people have been here for 5 or 6 years already on F1 status, and they haven't seen their family in that long.
Right.
It's not such an impossible way to get stamped back home to where you would want to avoid it, and if it's been a long time, you haven't seen family, you want to go back home and visit, just plan for about a 2-month vacation and try and schedule your appointment when you first get to back home. Most people are getting a 221G administrative processing right now anyway on the stamping process. So as long as you have all the supporting documents, client letter, employment letter, payroll records, there's not many issues that have been coming up.
Okay.
And I do think you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to repeat what you said. So it can be, they can actually opt to go to home country or to any neighboring country if they have all the documents in place with them. So it should not be a problem wherever they go.
Correct. Yeah, because traveling to Canada or Mexico is much cheaper than if you're in the States than traveling all the way back home.
Right. Okay, so got that, Lucas. And then let's just rewind a little back to the Farmington University episode. I'd just like to know if the issue is resolved for all the students now, and have there been any new raids done, or any general suggestions that you have for students out there?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, there's been obviously we saw an additional school that's based out of Tampa, Florida. We believe it's a fake university.
Okay.
As far as like another fake, the same issue happening with Farmington, I don't know if that's on coming up anytime soon. I wouldn't want people to be stressed about that. But I have seen other issues where I've had a couple of clients now that are going through adjustment of status process through marriage, and ICE Homeland Security investigations will show up at the person's house, and they'll want to come inside and look around, and they're intimidating the people who are sponsoring by saying, well, if this is fraud, you could go to jail and all this other stuff, and they're forcing people to sign letters withdrawing their applications, petitions. And I want people, the most important thing everyone can know here in the United States is, we have due process, and we have a constitution that protects our civil rights and liberties. And if ICE comes to your door and they want to come in your house or anything else, if they don't have a warrant or any other paperwork to give them a permission to go into the house or search anything or to talk to you, then I would just, decline that. And another good thing you can do is if someone does approach you, it could even be at your work, if a ICE officer approaches you and they don't want to hand you their business card, that's another red flag. So there's a lot of these agents that are operating that, will go around and they'll do pre-adjudication site visits, and 9 out of 10 people will just be wanting a report, hey, where's the client letter? I'm going to go make sure you're working at this in-client location, things like that. And they'll always produce a card, and they'll always maybe email or say what we need for additional evidence. But on occasion, I've heard of officers not doing that, and they'll try and intimidate the employee or the student to say things or admit things that aren't true. And, you just want to always remain calm. And I know it's a difficult situation if you might be intimidated, but you always want to remain calm and ask for the card if they show up at your work, or if they show up at your house. Definitely don't let anyone in your house unless they have a warrant. Okay. And so these are things just to keep in mind. And it's not just for like a Farmington type scenario, but it applies to everything. I've had a few clients that have been stopped by Customs and Border Patrol, and they'll pull their passports out, and they'll see if the visa had expired. And one of my clients, he was a student, and I think he lost his status for maybe 1 month, and he was driving through a checkpoint here in Texas, and he was detained. So it's just, you just need to be alert and make sure you understand the process of what's going on.
Right. So, what should they be doing ideally, Lucas? If they know that their, status is going to expire in a certain amount of time, what kind of steps should they be, taking to avoid such kind of, bad situations, to avoid such kind of detentions?
Well, obviously you want to keep your CVIS active, treat it like gold. It's your lifeline to maintain that status. If your CVIS expires or something happens, there's also been a few students, and this is why every student needs to be proactive. There's been a few DSOs who forget to update the CVIS. So if you're doing, changing from one school to another, or there's a change of status or something's going on, the DSO needs to make sure and keep that CVIS active. And I've seen it before where, a DSO, they might have other stuff going on. They'll forget to update that CVIS, and it will expire. And the student still thinks, oh, I'm still applying for the school, or everything's moving fine, when in fact they're out of status. And that's been happening more frequently. So, just make sure you stay in constant communication with the DSO. Make sure you're, paying attention to the dates that are issued and associated with your CVIS.
Right. Yeah, I hope, if students listening to our show, they might have gotten a better idea, on what to do now. So, yeah, we're almost, towards the end of the show, and I have a couple of questions regarding the DS-160 form that has been amended to include applicants to, add in the social media details. So what
Correct.
kind of social media details should be submitted, and is it also required to give in our personal email? And what is the reason behind this new amendment?
So again, we want to take a wider perspective of everything here, right? Everyone I've ever met from India is very straightforward, honest, a good person. There's people from other parts of the world, maybe also from India itself, that are not as good intended when they want to come to the United States. So I think since about 2008 or earlier, DHS has been monitoring social media. So even if, and this is something that everyone should know for their employers and everything, you should never put anything on social media that you wouldn't want your mom or dad to see, or your employer to see, or anything like that, because I can promise you, even if you don't grant access, the United States government's still going to access your social media. They're still looking at it. So I'm sure they have quite a few, and you don't want to be, a lot of this came up more for where it was more we've had a couple of terrorist attacks here in the United States. I think about a year and a half ago, there's a case in Southern California, San Bernardino,
Okay.
where these guy and his wife, shot their coworkers, and what they're looking for is any kind of warning signs of, what content that the persons might be sharing or anything like that. So it's not anything more than like a preventative measure to make sure you're not trying to overthrow the government, kill people, things like that.
Okay, got that. So when we say social media details, so what are the social media apps? What details are actually submitted, Lucas? So is it just Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, or what else is a part of that?
I don't know all the different. I'm not a big guru on social media, but I don't know what other platforms are covered.
Okay.
But it's like Twitter or Facebook. It's pretty much, you can see what links you like, which links you share, there's a lot of that data that is accumulated by what we do every day. And
right,
they can analyze that and just see what a traffic pattern might be for that person as far as like what their focus is on, right?
Right. So although it sounds like a preventive measure, but it still is a major intrusion of someone's privacy. So I don't know. It just kind of doesn't settle very well with me. I totally understand the reason behind that, but somehow it still seems like an intrusion of privacy. So yeah, give so much.
I agree with you. But just again, it's just going back to the adage that we live in a world now where once you post something to the internet, it's going to live there forever. So like if you would be embarrassed for your mom or dad to see something you post on online or comment online, then it's probably best practice to not do that.
Yeah. Okay. So if at a later time, Lucas, is there a chance that while getting an H-1B renewal or filing for an extension, the applicants are required to submit this information there as well? So is that a possibility too?
I'm sorry, ask me one more time.
Yeah, sure. So, the social media details that are now required to be submitted while submitting the DS-160 form. So, is there a chance that at a later time, while getting an H-1B renewal or while filing for an extension, the applicants are required to submit this information there as well?
No, and you probably won't see that because the employees actually are just the beneficiary of an H-1B petition. So the actual petitioner is the one who that the case is really about. So let's say your employer, it's really the employer who's filing the case and getting the case approved, and then the employee is the beneficiary, the person who benefits from that approval. So there's really not much standing for an employee to have on any adjudication of an H-1B case. So as far as that, the social media part on that goes, I don't believe that would progress to that stage.
Okay. So hope so too. Yeah. So and Lucas, I think we have pretty much covered the green card processing related updates, the H4 EAD removal updates, and the Farmington students, the issues about them. And I have just one more question to ask, something that's related to EB-5. So a quick question to you on that.
Sure.
So there's little to no knowledge on how to acquire an EB-5 visa. So to begin with, what are the steps to acquire one, and who gets to choose what kind of project to invest on? The investor or the county, and who gets to decide where to implement the business idea? Again, the investor or the county.
So EB-5 visa has been around for a few years now. There's two or three different ways you can go through an EB-5 process, and to just keep in the essence of time and everything, I'll keep it real simple. You can use a
Sure.
we have what we call a regional center, which is a nonprofit entity that is established to conduct, studies, economic studies, things like this, to administer projects in certain areas or regions.
Okay.
If you used a regional center like that, the threshold's $500,000 to invest. The regional center would then take the investment and invest in the project. They would have the control over the funds. And then at the same time, they would be the ones who would show directly or indirectly that you created 10 jobs. Okay. And that's
Okay.
probably the most important thing you can do if you want to go the EB5 route, is to find a really good regional center. You need to find a good financial advisor. You need to find a good attorney to help with all this. And you need to be very, very cautious about who's helping you and how they're helping you, because as an attorney, I can't go to you and say, hey, invest in this project over here. We'll do all this. You should be able to get your money back, and I'll also do your green card. There's a lot of conflicts of interest there. There's a lot of issues where you want to make sure you get your money back. If you get a return on it, that would be great. You want to make sure that going through this process, you get your visa, right? So there's a lot of details that go into this, and it's not as simple as just putting money out there. Okay. So we have to show, directly or indirectly, that 10 jobs are created for each investment. And when I say indirectly, that would mean, in the past we'd look at certain maybe commercial structures, and maybe around this area, there's so much economic addition here that, like, someone opens up a sandwich shop, and then someone opens up a gas station, and all these things. That's like an indirect addition for the 10 jobs. And then there's a couple more ways you could do a lump sum investment anywhere without the regional center for $1 million. And then you could also do another type of investment in a targeted economic area, a TEA, and that would be around the $500,000 threshold. But again, it's very, very specific and detailed process, and you really have to have a team in place. If you're working with anyone, if they don't have financial advisor, regional center, and a whole team in place, I would probably recommend you not work with that person, that attorney, or whoever it might be, because that's a lot of money to risk.
Oh, okay. Got that. Yep. So I think that's all I had, Lucas. Thank you so much for so